President Biden is marking the enactment of a landmark gun control bill in the U.S.
And it comes despite gun violence, or even as I should say, gun violence remains a very big problem all across this country. CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry picks up that story.
The White House invited survivors and family members of mass shooting victims to join President Biden on the South Lawn as he celebrated the passage of a gun control bill.
Because of your work, your advocacy, your courage, lives will be saved today and tomorrow because of this.
Congress passed the bill in the wake of mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde.
I spend half my days convincing kids that no one is coming for them and that they are safe knowing and that they are safe. But how do I say that knowing that the very weapons used in the attack are still freely available?
But the ceremony comes 1 week after another horrific massacre in the Chicago suburb of Highland Park.
The fact that guns in these shootings are legally obtained says that these laws need to be changed, but most importantly, weapons designed for combat need to be removed from the streets of the United States.
The president emphasized that the latest gun control bill doesn't go far enough. He says he'll continue to push for an assault weapons ban.
I'm determined to ban these weapons again and high-capacity magazines that hold 30 rounds and to let mass shooters fire hundreds of bullets in a matter of minutes. I'm not going to stop until we do it.
The president was interrupted by a protester calling for the creation of a dedicated office in the White House to address gun violence. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
And U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Xavier Becerra joins us now. Secretary Becerra, welcome. Thank you for being with us. So, of course, as you know, President Biden signed the Safer Communities Act more than a week before the Highland Park mass shooting took place. Will this new legislation help prevent similar tragedies?
The president himself said that chances are there'd be Americans alive today had this legislation become law before some of these shootings. It won't save everyone because we need to go further, but this is a critical first step.
Secretary Becerra, it's Tanya Dokoupil. The celebration today marking the passage of this legislation, the president pointed out it was historic in the sense that nothing had been done for so many years. Now, something was done. But as you point out, you got to go further. Pew has a survey out today finding that only 7% of Americans think that the current legislation that was being marked today is going to do a lot. Realistically, how much is it going to do? I mean, do you have a number you can put on it? Do you have any sense of the scale of this? How much of a difference is what was celebrated today going to do in this country or mean in this country?
Tony, first, I think it's a reflection of how the public has become very skeptical for good reason, because for so long politicians have failed to take action. I was in Congress back in 1993 when Joe Biden was a senator and we passed that assault weapon ban close to 30 years ago. It's been that long. That's why folks have become very, very cynical. But there is, for example, $150 million here to help us stand up the 988 suicide prevention hotline. As the president mentioned, so many people who kill themselves today, suicide, kill themselves with a weapon, a handgun. And so we can do a lot of things. We haven't done enough, but we got to start somewhere. You got to learn how to crawl before you can walk, and you got to learn how to walk before you can run. We want to cross that finish line on the 100-yard dash in record time, but we got to learn how to crawl and walk first.
It's a beginning, but a lot of Americans think there's a lot more to do. But I want to turn to another issue that's top of mind for a lot of Americans right now, Secretary Becerra, and that is the issue of abortion rights. President Biden said Sunday he's considering declaring a public health emergency to free up federal resources for promoting abortion access. However, at the same time, the White House is acknowledging that's not a great option. So what is your take on that plan, and what other strategies is the Biden administration considering in response to last month's overturning of Roe v. Wade?
Tanya, the president instructed us at HHS, and me specifically, to look for everything we could try to do, and that's what we're doing. And the public health emergency is one of those proposals, options that's there. We're taking a look. We want to do everything we can, but again, it is tough to undo a Supreme Court decision that unraveled, stripped away 50 years of protections for Americans in this country for health care. So we're going to do everything we can. We'll look at every option. We'll try to make sure that we can move. We don't want to get stuck in court, but we are planning to move.
So on the subject of moving and trying every option, I mean, could you enumerate a couple of the options? What else is on the table as a possibility?
Sure. So for example, if a woman happens to end up in an emergency room, something is happening, and it involves perhaps her pregnancy, in order to save her life, that woman is entitled to get the care she needs to stabilize her. That could include an abortion, even in a state that says it bans abortions. If your life is in danger and you have federal protections to make sure that healthcare providers provide you with all the protections you need, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that women understand what their rights are to get full protections that they're entitled to. There are other things as well. We're going to make sure we protect providers to the degree the law allows us, so that they don't feel that they will be before a criminal court simply for doing their job and fulfilling their Hippocratic oath.
Right, I was going to say, because there's crucial moments when we're talking about life or death situations. You can't have doctors sort of double, sort of second guessing what medically needs to happen because they're worried about being prosecuted, right, Secretary?
Yeah, think about that, Tanya. You go into the medical field, like my wife, who is a high-risk obstetrician gynecologist, knows about this stuff really well. You are in there to do no harm, to help stabilize and improve a patient's condition. Now all of a sudden you're practicing in a state that is essentially telling you, no, forget about that Hippocratic oath, forget about what you studied to do. You're going to do things differently now. And that is very difficult for a lot of these doctors and healthcare providers. We're going to do everything we can to protect their rights to exercise their profession.
Mr. Secretary, I've followed your career for a long time. I remember when you were Attorney General of California, your many terms in Congress. And so I've got a final question here that's sort of big picture on the subject of democracy. Both the issues we're talking about today involve areas where there's huge public support, say for gun control legislation, for access to abortion for women. And yet the law, the reality, is different from what most people want. And when you talk about cynicism, that leads to cynicism in democracy in our system. What do you say to people who are feeling that today?
Tony, first I think we have to tell people, can you find a better system anywhere in the world? And I think what most people will say is America has the best that you can find. We just have to improve on it. I believe that the Supreme Court better be very careful, because it was about the last institution in our government that had some semblance of common sense, distance from the politics. Today, I don't think you can say that. Today, 5 justices have implicated the Supreme Court in politics, and it's unfortunate because anytime you strip people of rights, you have to question why. America is about giving people freedom, protection, autonomy, and rights, not taking them away.
It's certainly been the tradition of
It
things.
is. Yeah, that was an interesting response.
Secretary Becerra, you got one of the biggest jobs in the country, overseeing the health and well-being of all Americans, the FDA, NIH, CDC. We appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today.
No, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Secretary.